Making a pineapple cake started with me making a pineapple coconut cake. Years ago, when I was making the cake, my family told me that they really didn't want the coconut on it, so I started making it just pineapple cake. This pineapple cake is moist and delicious, and it has a creamy cream cheese buttercream frosting. Welcome to Lornas.Cookin. I'm Lorna. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Those who know my cousin Olivia should thank her. She's the reason why I'm sharing this recipe. When she saw the picture of a pineapple cake on my Instagram page, she asked would I make a video sharing how I make it. And so I said yes. Now, baking is different than cooking. Baking is more scientific because of the ingredients and how they react to one another. While cooking, you can kind of put a dash of this, a dash of that, and everything should turn out okay. With baking, you need to be a little bit more exact in your measurements and the ingredients that you use. This recipe is a culmination of me looking at a lot of different cake recipes and praying and trying to figure out the measurements and what I wanted to use in the recipe so that it would come out moist and delicious. When I finally got everything like I wanted it and tasting like I wanted it, I was so happy. Yes, thank you, Lord. I was so happy. Anyway, it really turned out that good. So I'm going to share this recipe with you, and I hope you enjoy it. Oh, before you get started, as always, please make sure that you have all the ingredients that you need and the utensils that you need before you start making the cake, the filling, or the icing. Also, make sure that your butter, your buttermilk, and your cream cheese are already at room temperature. The butter and cream cheese, they don't need to be melted, they just need to be soft. I use some of the utensils that people most likely have around the house already. Like I used a butter knife to ice the cake, or I used a plastic storage bag instead of a pastry bag. And I did that because I didn't want anybody to feel that they need to run out and get any extra utensils or materials for this recipe. Now, if you do have a pastry bag or a scraper or even an offset spatula, that's great. Feel free to use that. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Now, time to make this cake, at least how I do it. Before I start making my cake, I turn my oven on to 350. Next, I get my 20-ounce can of crushed pineapple and I drain the juice into another bowl. And I keep both the juice and pineapple because I'm going to need all of it for this recipe. Combine the flour, the baking powder, and baking soda. Also add the salt. You're going to sift those three ingredients together. Now, if you have another kind of sifter, that's fine. Then you can use that. This is just a strainer that I use that does the same thing. Once the salt, baking powder, baking soda, and flour have been sifted together, then we're going to incorporate that into our butter mixture. Now I'm going to cream my 3 sticks of butter that I had at room temperature for about a minute, just until the butter becomes kind of creamy and a little light color. After about a minute, then I'm going to add the sugar and brown sugar. and beat on high for about 3 minutes. I'm going to add my eggs one at a time, and I'm going to beat a little just to make sure that each egg is mixed in well. After the last egg is mixed into the batter, I'm going to scrape the bowl down again and the bottom and mix it with my spatula. Add in the vanilla extract, the lemon extract, and the 2 tablespoons of pineapple juice. The next part of this recipe, I'm going to add the flour mix and the buttermilk alternating, ending with the flour mixture. Make sure when you're doing this that you do it on a low speed, because everything will come flying out of the bowl if you do it on a high speed. After I've done the last addition of the flour mix, I let the mixture turn just a couple of more times on low. I'm going to make sure that I don't overmix my batter. So it just needs to be mixed a little bit more after the last addition of the flour. Scrape down the sides and the bottom with the spatula just to make sure once more that everything is mixed. I prepared the cake pans by spreading shortening on the bottom and sides of the pan. Then I used some all-purpose flour and I shook the pan so that everything is coated on the inside. Make sure you use enough shortening and flour so the cake won't stick in the pan. If you only have 2 cake pans, that's fine. Cook 2 cakes at a time. After you cook the first 2, you let them cool, take them out, and then you fill the cake pans again and cook those. The batter will be fine in the bowl. If it's too warm in the kitchen, you can put the batter in the refrigerator until you're ready to bake. Pour 2 cups of batter in each of the prepared cake pans. The batter will be somewhat thick, like pancake batter, but that's okay. It's supposed to be like that. After I filled the pans, I stuck them in the oven and I baked them for about 20 minutes first. I checked the center with a toothpick to see if they were done, and they weren't, so I needed about 5 more minutes. After the cakes were done, I put them on a cooling rack and I let them cool for about an hour. Then I checked to make sure that they were completely cool. I ran a butter knife around the edges and then I took the cake out. Now, if you have a problem with taking out the cake, just put the cake in some warm water. The pan, not the cake. The cake pan into warm water, and that will melt the shortening in the bottom, and it should be easy for you to take the cake out of the pan. While the cakes are cooling, I'm going to make my pineapple filling. I'm going to use the drained pineapple, the reserved juice, but I'm going to pour that in a cup, and then I'm going to add water to that to bring it up to a full cup. I have my heat on medium-high. I'm mixing the cornstarch and the sugar up just until it's combined. Now I'm adding the pineapple juice and the water that I combined earlier. Once I have most of the lumps out of this mixture, I'm going to add the crushed pineapple. I added the crushed pineapple, and now I'm going to stir just until this mixture becomes thickened. After about 3 to 5 minutes, the mixture becomes bubbly and thick. After the pineapple mixture thickened, I transferred it to a bowl so it can cool. First, I beat the cream cheese and the butter together. After they're well mixed, I scrape down my bowl. I added the powdered sugar 1 cup at a time, and I make sure that it was on low, because if you try to mix powdered sugar on high, it's going to fly everywhere. After the cream cheese, the butter, and the powdered sugar are well mixed, then I added my vanilla. Mixing it on low, I added my salt and my 2 tablespoons of pineapple juice. The icing should be a nice, smooth consistency, easy for spreading, but thick enough to hold up for decorations. After I got the icing the consistency that I wanted, I spooned the icing in the corner of the storage bag so that it will be at a point when I'm ready to decorate. I carefully cut off the tip of the plastic bag. I held it in a way so the icing won't just all come squirting out. Once the cake was completely cooled, I began assembling my cake. I put the first layer of my cake on a cake round. If you don't have one of those, you can use a plate, or if you have a cake stand, that would even be better. I poured a little bit more than a half a cup in the center of my first layer. I spread the filling out almost to the edges, but not all the way to the edges, because the weight of the cake or the other layers will press the filling out just a little bit. Once I finished spreading out the filling, I put my next layer on, and I repeated what I did with the others. Once I got to the top layer, which is the 4th layer, I poured the remaining of the filling on the top of the cake. I spread about a 6-inch round of the filling in the top of the cake. I started at the top of the cake, making a wall around the pineapple filling. Then I moved around to the next layer, filling in where the cake layers met. I continued to do that all the way to the bottom of the cake. Once I had a generous amount of icing all around the cake and around the top of the cake, I took a butter knife and I began to smooth all the way around. I made sure that I filled in any gaps and tried to get the cake icing close to the top filling as I could. Once I got the cake iced as much as I wanted, I took a wet napkin and I cleaned up around the bottom, just so it'll look neat. So this is how I make my 4-layer pineapple cake. Now if you want to add coconut around the edges, that's fine. Then it would become a pineapple coconut cake or a coconut pineapple cake, just depending on what you want to call it. I hope you found this recipe easy to follow and it turned out great. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care.